In this video, we're going to look at linear regression using Minitab. Set of data that I'm going to work with is a sample set of data that I've taken from a course that I teach. I've looked at mid-year exam and final exam, and we're often curious to know, can I use a student's performance on a midterm exam as a predictor as to how well we would expect that they're going to do on a final exam? As a teacher, I need to be quick to point out there's a lot of other factors that may go into play. So it's a predictor, not a certainty that if you score a 60 on the mid-year exam, this is what you will get on the final, or if you get a 90 on the mid-year exam, this is what you get on the final. But as a general rule, as a predictor, what would we expect? What does the data from the past indicate that we could expect as far as a linear regression? So I have my data in C6 and C8. C6 is my mid-year exam data, and C8 is final exam data. I'm going to go to stat, regression. Okay, now I've done this already, so these three, predict, factorial plots, and response optimizer, those are black. The first time you come in here with a new data set, those will be grayed out, just kind of like these here, and you won't be able to select them until after you first run the regression model. So we're going to select fit regression model. Notice my response is final exam, and my predictor, my continuous predictor, is mid-year exam. Okay, so where I'm going to look here is I went to options. Confidence level for all intervals is 95. I'm going to click OK. Results. Now I've got expanded tables here. Your default is going to say sample tables, and let's simple tables, and let's put that back that way. And I simply run OK, and I will get a regression equation. We see the equation is the final exam is 18.06 plus 0.675 times the score on the mid-year exam. Our coefficients, we see the constant, the mid-year exam 0.675, constant is 18.06. We see our standard error, t-value, p-value. Our p-value is 0.000, which is much less than 0.01. Based on this data, we could conclude with 99% confidence that yes, in fact, there does appear to be a relationship between mid-year and final exam scores, and our R-squared value is 57.07%. Okay, for this course, the course that you're probably taking when you're watching this video, those are the important things that we're going to list from there, or lift from there, and some other information that will come later in this course. One other thing that Minitab will give me is unusual observations. Okay, now the final exam of 50 and 53, those are not necessarily unusual final exam scores. What's unusual about them is the difference between the mid-year and the final exam score. For example, observation number 4 is right here, where a student received a 76 on the mid-year and a 50 on the final. Okay, so that's a significant difference from 76 to 50. Observation number 27, student received a 74 on the midterm and a 53 on the final. Again, notice here's a student received a 54 on the final. It's not that 53, again, is an unusual observation for the final exam itself. It's that the disparity, the difference in mid-year and final is unusual for those two observations. Okay, wanted to point that out while we were there. Now, what's not here is a confidence interval for beta. Y hat, final exam, equals B1, B sub 0, 18.06 plus B1.675. Small b, this is my estimator for my population equation. Okay, for the entire population, what would I expect that slope to be? You notice that there is no confidence interval here. If I want that confidence interval, I'm going to go back to stat, back to regression, and fit my regression model. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to results. Remember that change I made before. The default is simple tables, and I get the results I have achieved here. If I change display of results from simple tables to expanded tables, this should not be earth-shattering here. We're going to expand the tables. So notice when I click OK, there's more information in each of these. And the one I want to point out to you is the 95% confidence interval for the slope. So my slope is 0.675 for my sample data. For my population data, I would predict that that slope is somewhere between 0.460 and 0.889 with 95% confidence. Okay, so that's how I'm going to get that confidence interval for beta. Now, another thing that I can use Minitab for is if I go back to stat, regression, and regression again, you see, remember I told you that these here, these options below this line are not available until after you run the regression model. I'm going to select predict. So let's suppose a student says, if a student has a mid-year exam score of 80, what would we predict? What would the regression equation predict that that student will receive on the final exam? I click OK. And notice I get a 95% prediction interval and a 95% confidence interval. Remember that the prediction interval would be for an individual receiving a score of 80 on the midterm. We would predict with 95% confidence that their final exam score is likely within this range, as opposed to for all students who received a mid-year exam score of 80, we would predict that the mean of their final exam scores would be in the range from 69 to 75, which is the confidence interval. So make sure you study up on the difference between the prediction interval and the confidence interval. What's nice about Minitab is it gives you both of them at the same time. If I go back there, stat, regression, and the predict, notice that there's more options here. I could enter not just 80. What about 85? What about 90? What about 62? Okay. Options, I can set whether I want it two-sided or one-sided, what my confidence level is. I'm going to leave it 95%. And again, notice I have the option not just for 80, or the result not just for 80, for student receiving an 85, prediction, confidence interval, 90, prediction, confidence interval, and so on. And I like that Minitab lists each one of them separately. Okay, now something that's not here is the scatter plot itself, stat, regression, fitted line plot. If I select the fitted line plot, and again, my response variable is the final exam, my predictor is the mid-year exam, options, I can set my confidence level, and then click OK. And notice that we get, again, the regression equation, R squared, an analysis of variance, and then we also get the fitted line plot with the individual pieces of data, as well as our regression equation. Okay. Notice that here are those two unusual observances, right? Fairly high mid-year exam scores, quite low final exam scores. Okay. So there's linear regression using Minitab.